Chapter 3. Welcome back to the story time. It was a rich, damp, warm evening. The setting sun's dark orange stroked the trees and vines with bright colour. Shadows of vines and branches on the forest floor crisscrossed. From these shadows, wassail flies awoke from their leaf-blanketed slumber and wuzzed up. Blue streaks of light and was they are, and they whirled in dizzying blue circles around all snouts out in the woods that night. Wassail flies tickle the end of the noses with their fairy, hairy feet, trying to catch a warm out-breath until they are snuffed up or blown away. Luckily for all snuffers and jumpers, these flies are lonesome, long-winged wuzzes that travel alone, not often in big groups. Our two travellers knew these flies live around hills. They had travelled without climbing hills for 10 moons. The orange light was now deepening into red, shining red, the grasses on the forest floor, but darkening the trees into more shadow. In this darkness and redness, occasionally wuzzed the blue streak of a fly. The light turned to a deep brown, and at this time the wassail flies come together into deep balls of blue and drift slowly up into the dark tree canopy. Stars began to glisten through the branches of the trees. Our travellers moved together on up the hillness. Ground steepened, trees lessened to curly weed and silver slith-leaf bushes. Suddenly, without warning, Wangdoogly turned around and began to pad back down the hill. Woolawoo span around and leapt over him to stand in front of him and said, "Where you be going?" "Dunno. Away." He turned his head and looked up the hill. Worry scooned his shaggy eyes. Woolawoo sniffed at the air, closed her eyes, but she could not smell or feel or sense anything dangerous ahead. "Come closer, sweet Oogly. We must meet. We must get to our valley soon." She looked down and stroked her tummy. "It calls to my tummy." Then she stroked his head and nose. Wangdoogly grinned, closed his eyes to receive the strokes, and roomed with sleepy pleasure. "Okay, sweet one, you tired. We sleep. Going up in morning." Woolawoo scuttled up a palif-leaf tree and kindly received soft leaves from it. She arranged the leaves in a hollow under the tree, and they curled up together and went easily to sleep. They awoke the next afternoon. Wangdoogly still felt the same way. He did not wish to go up the hillness. Woolawoo stroked him, and calmed and reassured him that he did not change. "Please follow." Then she left him and scootled on up the hill. Wangdoogly, still worried, but shoomed by fresh Woolawoo's stroking, followed her slowly and sleepily. Woolawoo ventured through shadowy vine-hung tunnels, made by the trees becoming smaller. The shadowy tunnels run in all directions, like a maze. Higher up the hill, giant bluff leaves grew close together, making the tunnels more a push-through. Woolawoo pushed through them, trying to be quiet. But in the quiet, the odd tree spirit could feel watching her with a sense of anxiousness. After sensing this from a few trees, Woolawoo stopped, closed her eyes, and inquiringly asked one what it was that they felt unsettled about. The only reply she felt was the same unsettledness that we call fear, an unknown feeling to Woolawoo. With quick images of red and whiskers, she looked behind her and stopped and hoped Wangdoogally was still following, and went on up the hill, despite the tree's unsettledness. Soon, very soon, Woolawoo began to smell another creature nearby and felt a little startledness, tinged with excitement. Her startledness said, turn back and find Oogly." So she waited a while. Excitement sharpened her surroundings, churning gently in her tummy at first, and then it said loudly, "Go on, he'll be following, all'll be fine." So she wished on. Suddenly she was out of the forest and looking across a rock-scattered hilltop. To her left, rocks scattered steeply down a slope to the forest below. Woolawoo wandered a little way onto the hilltop and looked left across the majestic view of the forest that stretched away below. It reminded her of a bobbly patchwork carpet like those made in her village, of blue, purples, and greens. Occasionally big swat vines spiraled out like loose carpet threads above the trees, and down and far away from it swathed its way, swooning into the distance, to a gentle yellow horizon. In front of her, rock and bush-scattered hilltop went on for 15 leaps and met blue sky. As she could not see trees, she guessed there was another big drop the other side of the hillness top. To her right, the edge of the forest curved around away from her, then disappeared. Amongst the rockiness, she could see small blueberry bushes, purpled with berries. The bushes looked like big hanging spiders with many berry shoes as they dangled over the rocks. Woolawoo silently watched the blue sky, now getting darker and darker, and breathed it in. It was then she was grabbed from behind and pulled back into the forest. She screeched and wriggled, but strong arms held her firm. "Shh!" she heard a voice say. "Be quiet. You'll bring them, and they will eat us. I am helping you. Shh!"